When you practice this, then that attention, that singular attention of you, that self of you, whatever you can name it as of now, will become relatively separated. It gets an independence from being just a what you call incidental victim, an incidental participant to that of an observer. That there are various languages to talk about, like you master your mind. Like most great philosophers and mystics said, the greatest mastery in existence is mastery over your mind. That will happen. Then you become, that is the road to become what you call, you become kind of an agency of pure intent. That's the way when you become power, where you intend something and it happens. That's all little so-called higher level. But you don't get blocked by the concept of higher level and all that. That is the possibility which you are aiming at. Instead of being a victim of the intents of some unknown locations and spaces, instead of being victims of the conscious and non-conscious and manipulative intents of others, you become liberated, you become what you call flexible enough, you become a fish that cannot be caught, that cannot be trapped, that cannot be hooked by the intents of other people. These are all possible, probable consequences which we are talking about. And at the genius in self level, what I would like you to constantly try is to be a force of intent of this universe, of this planet Earth, of existence, so that you would intend what to happen and what not to happen in your life. And intend to be liberated from the intents of others, liberated from the processes you happen to be undertaking or you happen to participate in. Last time we discussed and we almost concluded that there cannot be a process without an intent. Did you think about that? Did you register it? Did it strike you? Whether that part of the film struck you, that there cannot be a process without an intent? What are the implications of that conclusion or observation? And in between shot of the film of our discussion. So keep always in mind that there cannot be a process without an intent. Impossible. Now in the case of the FIR or the case study, how come such a so-called evil intent or a dangerous intent or a destroying intent formed in the body of that, let us say, innocent human being? When there are millions and millions of such bodies, why that particular body developed the intent of, quickly speaking, the intent of cancer? Cancer meaning cellular formations which are contradictory in function of the existent cells of the body. That's called cancer. And that kind of cells multiply in varied speeds. Speed number 1, it is called the level 1, where it multiplies its number in a certain speed, using the very fire of the body, okay? Always have to consider. At level 2, the multiplication is in a higher speed, I suppose. And level 3, much higher speed. And level 4 is the speed gone variable and out of control. The candidate here was in level 4. Where was that intent? What is the nature of that intent? Intent here you can use another word like cause and all that. So cause is just another word, but I would say technically for us to understand further, understand beyond, we better use the word intent. Because that intent continues to exist there. Like Uday pointed out last time, at every moment of the ongoing process that intent is operating. If the intent is removed, the process is stopped. For example, a person is cooking a cup of tea, and let us say it takes 5 minutes, let us say so, for understanding. And at the end of minute 2, he has some other idea, he turns off the process and he goes out. Okay? The intent to cook a cup of tea is vanished. Then there is intent to go and meet a guest in the front of the house. So tea process is turned off. No, as I understand, the chemical medicines cannot destroy that intent of cellular or toxic cellular growth called cancer. So what they did, they just surgically removed the extra cells. But according to what Dr. Vinay told me, and what I understood by my further reading of some internet sources, even if 100% of cells, so-called cancerous cells, are removed, after some time again it will come because the intent is not removed. The intent is hiding somewhere in the body. Okay, that is level 1 or orbit 1 of the intents. The closer orbit. At the orbit outside, out of the millions of other human beings, why this happened to this particular child, this particular girl? This is a sample question only. This question can be asked in varied locations, like Naveen said. Why you happen to marry that person? When there are hundreds of other people, why you happen to marry this given person? When there are hundreds of houses available, why you happen to purchase or construct this particular house in this particular space and this location? See? I am just giving a sample, a silly, stupid sample only. It can be asked to every facet, every aspect of existence, like Naveen pointed out in the beginning. What is the intent behind your sitting there right now? What is the intent behind your participating in this program? Where is the location of that intent? How it got translated as the intent of you? Is there a will associated with that intent?
I found it comfortable to think I'm just a component and not really the intended.
Okay. Who Sarah is telling that, right?
Parvati.
Sarah said it, right?
No, Sundarji. Parvati.
Oh, Pavati, sir. Pavati, okay. That is, you said, you are talking about the process of this GIS session, right?
Yeah, in the
All right.
process, I find it comfortable to think I am the component and not really the intender.
That is what, that's a good point anyway. That's what I said just before, that it is easier. You can look at the world as it is, the way it's seen by the great majority of people, the way it is seen in a video. If you take a video, it will show whatever is visible. It will not show, no video will show what the invisible intents. If it is made in the film director, the scriptwriter may introduce an intent and which will be conveyed through the dialogue, which will be conveyed through the expressions and responses and behaviors and actions and the ways of relating with others by the character or characters in the video. But even then there are millions of other invisible intents. So that's a side point which I am making. But what Parvati said is, you can look at you as one of the components. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. One of the 11 components. Okay. But can you be one of the elements also? Elements get transformed.
Intender is chosen.
No.
I find it very
We are,
interesting the intender's will,
no,
not my will.
we are coming to the intent, Parvati, yes. But why do you restrict it to yourself as a component? But
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's because
when you say you are a component, do you mean to say that a component does not change in a process?
component changes, tea leaves changes. Right?
No.
It goes through transformation at the development intender.
Oh, we have to go back to the listing. We have selected certain terms to talk about the factors in a process, Parvati. Components are the mechanical or the material items that enable a process. In tea, components are just, let us say, reduce it to two, the stove and the vessel. Okay?
Okay.
Elements
Then I would call myself ingredient. Sorry, I used the wrong word.
Elements meaning that which get transformed in the process. Water, tea leaves and sugar. These are the elements.
Yeah, elements. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I won't use that word. Yeah.
Yeah, you are one of the elements. Okay, agreed. So you mean to say that there was no intent at all in your sitting there? No, it is impossible. You too have an intent. What is that intent? Is that intent just to abide by whatever directions I suggest? I am doing this program anyway, he is known to me, he is doing this, therefore let me be there. Is that the intent? That could be one intent.
No.
Can there be another intent that let us see what all these things and I have to derive maximum ideas or knowings and perspectives out of that? Is that intent there? You know?
Yes.
So without intent, without the role of an intent, you just cannot sit there. Intent in association with the will. Intent cannot, nothing can operate on one. I told you there are minimum 3 linkages. So when we talk about that, because that as an example, if this genius in self session is a process, it is a process, not if, it is a process, comprising the interaction between you and me, comprising the interaction of those among you. Okay? The elements are the ideas which we discuss. And ideas about what? Ideas about your own self, or ideas about various other aspects which can finally carry certain linkages to your own self. with the intent, in my case, to get your mindset and yourself transformed into a so-called fully functioning, a higher order self, which we have named genius in self, or a genius or a genius self, a self that is genius. Which makes a question where, in existential realities, is there transformation happening? In a mechanical tea process, if you put the water in the vessel above a flame of a stove, it will get transformed. It cannot be stopped. It's a very, very strong transformation, using which the ancient locomotives and the modern, what you call even the nuclear power plant works by the steam generator only. The nuclear energy is used to generate fire by which water is boiled in very high speed, and that steam, high pressure steam, is put on the what you call, on the turbine, yeah, which rotates. So that is the power of steam, or that is the potential of water. I don't know what will happen if the boiler is completely closed, and if you go on heating it. I suppose whatever be that boiler, it will burst one day. Anyway, so water gets transformed. So because water is that flexible, water is some kind of a nothingness, in the sense that it can adopt the medium. That's why the philosophy of China, called Tao, always would like to compare the mind to develop the power of watercourse, to be flexible, to be penetrating like water, to be powerful like water, to be calm like water, to be resilient like water, to be patient like water. But if this program is cooking the cup of tea called genius self, where is the intent? Okay, stop there. Anybody else would like to talk? Anybody made a presentation per se?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, I made a presentation.
Come on, show it. You are ready to show it in the screen?
I'm ready to show it.
Then do it. Wonderful.
So, in order to talk about process perspective, I had to first look up the meanings of each of the words, like we had done in the beginning. So, I think we all are familiar with what the meanings are. We had discussed that in the previous session. So, the perspective, I've taken the basic meaning from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. So, perspective is the capacity to view things in their true relations or relative importance. Or it is also a particular way of considering something. And the meaning of process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end, or a natural phenomenon marked by gradual changes that lead to a particular result.
All right. Okay.
Now there are more meanings, but I only took what I felt was apt for whatever I'm going to talk about.
Okay, good. No. Wait. Go back. So, will you explain? Will you interpret? Will you expand the first one? First meaning of the word perspective.
The first meaning, okay. In my perspective, to whatever the meaning is written there, I think perspective is a very uh, humanly connected aspect uh, of a result of a process that happens in our uh, body.
In our intellect, okay, all right.
Yeah,
Wherever it is, okay, all
yeah,
right.
whatever it is. So, uh, the perspective is therefore a way in which human beings, with the help of language, interpret the things that are around them, and therefore, I think comes the relative importance because it's always related to something that is around, and perspective cannot exist in itself because you always need something to see about.
What more?
In the first meaning,
Yeah.
I'm not very sure about
No, no, no,
you.
don't look at
Can you?
look at the given data. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 concepts in that.
The first concept is the capacity.
Yeah, come on, don't leave it, do not take it for granted. They're all, that's what I said. This is actually looking at that concept in process perspective. Anybody with minimum English language can understand that. It is only a mere understanding. But the depth, the perspective is not available. Perspective itself meaning it has a 360-degree dimensional existence. Normally perspective, for example, is used in drawing, technical drawing, perspective drawing it is called, by architects and all that. It will be three-dimensional drawing of a building with its background, trees, etc. So, first of all, it is a capacity. That's what I have been talking just before, coming to asking for the next presentation. It requires a certain capacity. Anybody with eyes can open and see a city, see a road. Okay? Like almost everybody can do what everybody can do. Human beings are very intelligent creatures, so great lot of commonality is there. Human beings are all so-called intelligent beings. They're all seeing things, that's why they're all surviving. And they're a beggar on the road, or a farmer in a village, or a so-called tribe in a forest region, or a city man, they're all intelligent. They all see things, but things are much beyond that. That's why we talk about genius. That's why we say serious researchers have concluded after a umpteen number of studies that only 0.03% of human beings are at a genius level. Yeah, it requires a certain capacity. So, what is that capacity? It can vary. Any capacity varies from one individual to the other. There is a normal distribution. Including the capacity to walk long distances, or to run, or to cook, or to write, or to talk. In every doing there is a variation of capacity. Okay? So this capacity, though everybody has, it is never uniform. Okay? So whenever there is a human variable, the one thing that must strike you is that there is a normal distribution. There is one guy who is wonderful, and there are hundreds of guys who are not, and the majority is in between. If it is the case with every other capacity or ability or aptitude or mindset or frame of reference or whatsoever, definitely the capacity to see things in perspective also must vary. Everybody definitely cannot be the same, and there will be only a few buddies who do wonders. Okay? Alright. Yeah, come on. To view things, things is a generic word. Things can be an actual thing, a material thing, or a non-material thing, like Naveen in the beginning said that visible thing, or invisible thing, or tangible thing, or intangible thing, or subtle thing, or imaginary thing, or visualized thing, or a so-called real thing, or unreal thing. Look at the wonderful minds of those who wrote the brilliant fairy tales in such a beautiful order and arrangement, in such a believable way. See? All right. Yeah. Now next one, next significant concept. What is that?
The true relation.
In the true relations. In fact, that is the central pillar. This is what I said in the beginning before, much before. Anyone can open their eyes and see what is going on. This is what in the beginning Naveen also mentioned. The true relations. What is the true relation? Because this will come into importance when you look at your own existence. Like why that particular girl, when there are millions of girls or millions of children born in the slums and remote, so-called unhealthy, uncouth kind of so-called locations in the world, why a girl born and brought up in a really a very affluent family, okay, with very healthy parents, okay, very healthy. Father is about 6.1 feet tall. Mother also is a really tall woman. Their bodies are even very healthy. Even now. And their only girl child. Why she developed this particular anomalous formation of cells named cancer. And that too in the brain. Totally debilitating the entity. Here true relationship meaning, what is the true intent, where is the truth of that origin and development of that so-called anomaly in the body. Very brilliant otherwise. She got a campus placement in IBM. It is told that she learned Bharatanatyam, she learned classical music, among other things. And above all, so-called glamorous. Even film directors requested her to take some role in films. That much glamorous girl. What is the true intent behind all those things? So according to the philosophy of Rasayanas, serious illnesses can happen by basically four linkages. One is the terribly unethical activities committed by the person, the so-called given patient. Second, unethical activities committed by the mother or the father or both of them. Three, unethical activities committed in the previous Janma. And four, unethical activity executed by somebody else in order to destroy the given person. So let us look at the primary thing. Why an unethical activity done by a person ends up in such a result? For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Let us look at it that way. Where is the intent when somebody does an unethical action? It is not unethical. The word used in the Malayalam translation of the Sanskrit term is papam, meaning sin, S-I-N, sin. So when a sin is committed, if it results in serious illnesses of the body, it is a declaration by Dhanvantari, the greatest mystic of Ayurveda. So it cannot be wrong. connections, linkages. Linkages. Here, actually, this all is just common words used in a dictionary. The true linkages. Okay, so that is perspective. So if you are, do not claim pride in quickly understanding something. It is very likely that quick understanding of that something or an entity or a phenomenon or an event or an episode or a person, if you see it quickly, just don't conclude there. Wait for some more time. Reflect and reflect. There could be many more true linkages of different levels of importances. What we see in the beginning cannot be the real truth. Impossible, definitely, because any given thing is a manifestation of hundreds of invisible things. And any given process is driven by something other than the doer. Get the point? As we said in the other day, no human being can cook a cup of tea. The tea gets cooked by the energy of the universe. What man can do is to provide the setting of components, put that elements and start the energy directed towards it and just to wait. That's all. The transformation of the elements happen by something else. By some organic intent, let us say so-called cancerous cells or anomalous cells were formed in the body. Again, if you go back to Dhanvantari and Sushruta and Charaka, by what kind of a sin it became cancer? Not diabetes or not kidney problem or not liver problem or not a digestion problem. The serious most trouble. When there are people even in my own locality eating all kinds of stupid things, okay? They cannot take bath because there is no water. I don't know whether they wash other parts of the body, I don't know. Because there is no water supply. And I wonder how do they wash their vessels properly? Here I use at least 100 liters of water to wash the plates. Sometimes I wonder how they would be washing their plates and vessels. And they have no illnesses. Not even normal fever. Then comes another observation from the very Dhanvantari. Ragadi roge. That means illnesses can develop also by serious emotional conflicts. Yeah, that intent is almost neurologically clear. Because emotional conflict meaning opposite dimensions of impulses are coming out of the brain and travels through the spinal cord and transmitted through the autonomic nervous system. So when one set of impulses are pressing the heart to pump more, other set of impulses are working against it. What called so-called excitatory waves and inhibitory waves are generated by the brain. So one set of so-called excitatory waves are increasing the heart pressure, heart pumping, then inhibitory impulses are coming to limit the number of heartbeats. Similarly, excitatory impulses are coming to work the millions of processes in the small intestine and the large intestine, then other processes are coming in order to apply brake on that processes. That is somewhat clear. Okay. Or some toxic substances going into the body. Alright, it can also work as a physiological intent because it's actual poison, which is against the original setting and process of the cells and cell membranes and glands and glandular processes. Yes. All right, Mantra Rishika. Okay, yes, come on, second one.
And second meaning is a particular way of,
Yeah,
the next concept is relative importance in the first
yeah.
meaning.
Yeah, relative importance. That is, that requires tremendous analytical, creative, analytical power of the intellect. Relative importance meaning when there are three variables, which one is more operating, more powerful? How will you know that? That itself will not talk to you, I am more powerful. This variable is operating. So it is like Mantra Rishika in the beginning said, these are all from human perspective. The human intellect has to creatively analyze which one of the three variables are more important, or importance number one, importance number two, importance number three, relative importance. Yes, correct. This much is there in perspective. So just don't go by the word. These are all process realities of the universe. Universe outside and universe inside. The larger universe and the small universe of the very cellular membrane. Remember Dr. Vinay's talk. The cellular membrane is the primary example of wonderful process perspective. It can identify. It has the capacity to view, meaning look at and identify factors in the true relations with what? The internal process of a cell, and according to its relative importance, it will receive those aspects which are required for its nutrition, and the remaining aspects are not allowed to enter the cell. Similarly, waste materials are just thrown out of the cell. So perspective is a universal truth only, evidenced by the very cellular membrane of any organism. Maybe the cellular membrane of the plants are all biological materials, or even physical materials. Copper vessel, if you use copper vessel, it will get hot faster than an iron vessel. Certain rasayanas are to be made in iron vessel only. Certain are to be made only in copper vessel. It is specifically mentioned. And certain rasayanas are kept to be, actually it should be kept in golden containers. Containers made with gold. And so on and so forth. So every human being, as I said, is intelligent, and they are all doing this actually. They are all identifying the so-called truth according to their capacity. In which case everybody should be living happily ever after. Every human being should be knowing what to eat and what not to eat and how to eat and when to eat. Okay? Every human being should be knowing how to behave and how not to behave, how to relate with others, how not to relate with others, what to talk and when to talk and how to talk. Why they are not able to do that? Because they have a perspective problem. In a dyadic interaction, or in dyadic meaning in a two people interaction, one person looks at the relative importance or the true relations is different from the other one. And whenever it happens, there is a conflict. And by every inch of that improvement of conflict, perspective goes on changing till the point of, so-called divorce or separation or quarrel or physical battering or whatever. It's all this problem of perspective. So when you are training somebody, you have to train their perspective. You have to make them sensitive to their perspectives about life and work and relationship and other people and relatives and events and episodes in their life. Then you become a mentor, then you become a guide, then you become a guru, then you can enable shift, then you can transform an individual. Unless the individual undergoes a process, transformation is impossible. Just mugging up, knowing there is no process. Just mugging up Lalita Sahasranamam or Bhagavad Gita or the Bible or the Quran, there are no processes happening at all. Zero process. Evidenced by the realities of the world. It should be processed. It should be processed by the analytical, reflective engines of the system. Then only the entity becomes transformed. Otherwise, entity just stores up information, library. Books never opened. Okay. So think more about perspective. What is the perspective of the President of Canada now? There is an increasing conflict between Canada and India. Suddenly. All religious conflicts and fratricide, all political fratricide and conflicts, all international, everything is a perspective problem. Their capacities are different, or they are pretending for various other reasons. There are some other intents operating behind Canada's movement. It is not because they don't have a clarity or they don't have the capacity to view things in true perspective. True relations or relative importance. Yes, their relative importance is different. Their importance is to see somehow India collapsed. Alright, yeah. Go on reflecting. So do not look at perspective as just a term. It is just the name of, like Naveen said, a huge referent reality. Every one of you is nothing but a symbolic representation of nothing but perspective about everything. Starting with the toothbrush to toothpaste to cooking gas to water tap to dress to car to everything. The religion perspective, the caste perspective, the community perspective, the class perspective, the status perspective, the female perspective, the male perspective, the upper class perspective, the lower class perspective. See? About the same thing. For example, about governing the country, there is a perspective of a certain political party, then another political party. Everybody talks about the welfare and development of the people of the country. And on the other side, every individual is trying to develop and progress and succeed only. Just imagine, every human being wants to succeed. Every human being wants to reach a level of happiness, purpose, happiness. The so-called pressure principle by which the entity is programmed. From an earthworm to human being, it is programmed for happiness, for pleasure. Everybody is trying for that. And they end up in miseries. Almost great majority are living in misery. In their very attempt to increase happiness. There is some problem with their intent. There is some problem with understanding the true relations of variables involved. Many people even do not know what makes them happy. They have all imitated the intents available. They think that by getting good marks in the exam they feel happy. And after some time again unhappy. Then I'm getting into good job, happy, again unhappy. Getting into good marriage, okay, happy, then again unhappy. Buying a good house or constructing a good house, happy, again unhappy. Buying good cars and good possessions, happy, again unhappy. And they are not able to see the true relations. They are not able to see the relative importance. They all know. They all clearly reproduce so-called statements of the mystics that simplicity and gentleness make people happy. They all know that money does not make people happy. They all know that wealth and fame and recognition do not make people happy. Their models or their gurus are the well-known people, the so-called Jesus or Krishna or whoever. They are not at all in any way connected with the things of happiness. According to the perspective of the very great majority of people who worship them. So then what is the perspective? They don't see the truth. Their intents are aware. Their intents are borrowed from the other people. Look at your own intents. How genuine and how original it is. If your life is a process, what is the guiding intent? Are you aware of that intent? Have you ever questioned your own intent? The so-called Bhagavad Gita talks about karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu katachana. You just do your karma. The intent shall not be invested on the output. How much money I will get, how much fame I will get, how much recognition I will get. If there cannot be a process without an intent, when a document comes to your table, when a new task comes to your table, or when there is an ongoing task, what was the intent behind your doing it? What is the will behind doing it? Is an intent directly translated because of the pressure, or is there the combination of your own will also along with that? No, this is done by compulsion, without which you cannot be there in the organization. Is that why you do it, or is there a genuine will? Do you understand the true relations of the you being there in that organization? Do you see the relative importance of what you do and what you do not do in the organization? Do is nothing but what? A process. Every so-called father and mother has a perspective about how to nurture their child and make him wonderful. Every father and mother is trying to make the child wonderful and competent and super, rather a king only. No mother can ever consider even the possibility of her son or daughter becoming an average person. No mother. Not even a mother in a slum. And she is doing everything with an intent. Is there a conflict of intents? Why the mother is not able to translate, maybe to transport that intent and its genuineness to the developing child? Why a leader is not able to inspire and liberate the colleagues to accommodate the intent of that role positions or the intent of the corporation? If there is an intent for a corporation or a department or a division. So I'm just asking sample questions. This question can be asked to anything and everything because the entire existence is nothing but a combination of that itself is a huge setting of hundreds of processes. In that hundreds of processes, what are the true relations of every process that you do with your existential purpose? What is the relative importance of your every doing? Which doing is more important, more critical? To go for a film or to sit down and study, or to watch a TV program or to sit down and work hard? How do you interpret the intent of other people? One more question. Yeah, many more questions can be asked. Okay, second point, okay. A particular way of considering something. Yeah, it is more or less the same as the above. Yeah, process, come on.
Yeah, a process is a series of action or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end.
Yeah. Which is the critical word in that? If you look at, if you say one of the relative importance of the true relations of the various concepts in that sentence or that idea. Every idea, every concept in a sentence. What is an idea? A setting of concepts. Concepts meaning a setting of words in a certain order, Sarah, as you said, because you cannot say, for example, the first one, the capacity to view things in their true relations or relative importance. You cannot say the capacity relative view things true their importance relations. Okay, all the words are there, but it must be in an order to convey the intent of that idea. Okay. So similarly, a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end, which is according to the relative importance, which one is more important?
A particular end.
Okay, second one.
A series of actions.
Okay, if you take one word each at a time.
Series.
Every word is a concept, including prepositions and participles. You cannot say in order of achieve, you have to say in order to. That's the intent of the word. Every word has an intent. That we will come maybe in the next session. So what, if you go by single words, which one word is of most significance, relatively?
Actions or steps.
Yeah. Why?
Because the actions and steps come together to form a process.
Yeah. Yeah, action should be, I would say in a certain sense, taken is the critical thing.
Okay.
Because in every process, by the very process, it involves a series of steps. And every process is for a particular end. If actions are not taken meaning to do, the doing.
Yeah.
Unless it is done and just keeping it in the mind, like the great religious wisdom kept in the mind as very, with all kinds of sanctity. It is never translated into doing. Like the Ten Commandments of the Bible or other good ideas. In every religion has great and wonderful ideas. But they are not taken. They are just talked and being printed in the book, closed book, more or less the same only. Am I right now? Just talking an idea and the same idea in the printed book, never opened in the stack of books, is more or less the same only. But a lot of people just live in an illusion that because they know it, because they talk about it, they are making it real. Reality is the process only. Like Navin said, referent reality is the process. Others are all empty, non-existent words. Or words existing only in the mind or in the books. I go on talking about eating biryani. I cannot get biryani. I have to eat it. I have to get it. The doing of a series of steps to achieve a particular end. That is the way it should be edited and reset. The order needs to be reset.
Okay. Yeah.
Then only it is a process. Okay. Series of steps, okay. We know what are the series of steps in cooking a cup of tea. And we know the end product. But unless I get up and go to the kitchen and take the vessel and set it on the flame and put the elements and wait for the duration until it is made, the tea is never made. I can go on talking about making a cup of tea for hours to a great audience, but they are all just names of things. Names are not the reality. Yeah, then a natural phenomenon, of course. A great lot of natural processes are going on, which it will go on and nobody can do anything. That's what also Navin said in the beginning. Entire universe in a process. What process, etc., etc. There are a lot of so-called scientific findings and all that. Nobody knows what is the intent, where is the intent, what is the setting. Okay, we know the setting of the solar system, but is that the only setting? Nobody knows. There may be definitely other variables operating. Otherwise, why the Earth should revolve in a certain definite speed? Why it should rotate? Why it should rotate and why it should revolve in a certain path? What is controlling that? And the sequence of umpteen number of items that are being originated and sustained and destroyed and again originated and destroyed and sustained and so on and so forth. See the process perspective. Nature is the greatest example of an ever ongoing process happening in front of you. Observe the setting of the nature around you. It may look very artificial inside a city, but that is man-created artificial city. It has no significance in a way. That's why people should go for a trekking, for a walking, should interact with the nature. The ultimate process, where
It's
every other
23
process
hours.
is contained. The nature process in planet Earth, the foundation of every other process, including man-created process that goes on in your smart mobile. They are all nature process only. They name it electronic process, electrical process, mechanical process, etc. They are all fooled by renaming them. They are all nature process only. Whether it is a gunshot or a pressing of a button and a picture coming on the screen of your mobile, they are all nature process. They are all properties of the materials taken out of the nature, processed by using the nature process. The speed of an automobile engine is the speed of a thing getting fired. That gasoline air mixture getting fired. See what a speed it is. 6,000 RPM, 10,000 rotations per minute. The pistons are moving in such a super speed, means that is the speed of the gasoline mixture catching fire and exploding inside the cylinder. Nobody can exceed the speed of that. Electronic signals, they call electronic signals. Bullshit. It is all possible, they are all properties of this very planet Earth. Radar signals, they just name it and they think it is their own. Like a certain group of people are given certain names which are called Christian names, some called Muslim names, some called Hindu names. What a stupidity of the so-called great human beings. Creating their own miseries, creating the life of themselves as well as the humanity in the perpetual misery. And claiming that human beings are the most wonderful nonsense in the world. What is the nature of life process now? Has the life process changed an inch? If it is not deteriorated. Okay. Alright. So that is called the process perspective. Please proceed Manda to the next slide.
So I've tried to understand what process and process is. So this is a diagram that I drew while I was trying to understand or kind of decode what the referent of process could be.
Okay.
So there are a lot more things, but I've only written 5 here. So processes are continuous and varying. Is it clear what I'm
Yes, clear.
Clear.
It's continuous and varying. And processes are situations or things which are in motion,
Hmm.
as in not the normal understanding of movement, but in general there is some motion, there is a change
Yeah,
happening between
yeah.
two periods of time.
Yeah, there is visible motion or visible change and invisible change. Okay, all right. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually processes exist in a medium, whether
Oh, I
it
see.
be in
Uh-huh.
our understanding or that is visibly present in front of us, that it requires a medium to operate in.
All right.
And then processes are interdependent.
Yeah.
Even within one particular process, there are other processes happening which aid that particular process to be a process.
Okay. For
And
example,
then processes,
wait.
ex-
For example,
for example, we're taking the preparation of a cup of tea. Um, Though we on the stove, the fire is an ongoing process because of different elements causing the fire,
oh, okay.
and it is aiding in the process of making the tea. And the same thing happens with the water inside the vessel, the sugar being added, the tea powder that is being added. So all those are undergoing its own processes and is being a part of the process of the preparation of the tea.
Okay.
So the processes are interdependent and processes exist because of or exist within a duration. The, or in other words, process
Every process has its duration. All right.
has its duration. Shall I move on?
Yeah.
The strokes that you have made are also, it gives the feeling that they are in a process. It's in motion.
Thank you, Bharati. Yeah, while I was doing this, in order to better articulate what I had in mind, I had to draw an indication of what I was feeling in my mind when I was thinking about the process.
I feel it's actually moving.
Yeah. So I think if we think about it more, not if we think about it, when we focus more upon process, there are more aspects that come to it, but I've only written 5 of those here.
What was another one in your mind which you did not represent here?
Yeah, I didn't represent most of them because I was.
Give an example of one or two of them.
Yeah, those were usually questions.
For
As
example,
in, every process need not have a perspective, but every perspective exists because of a process.
what is it? What is again?
No, every process need not have a perspective. Because a perspective is I was looking at it at a point of view that the perspective is a human input into the process. So a process need not have a perspective, but a perspective exists because there is a process.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, all right.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so that was one thing that I can remember right now. So it is basically a question towards myself for me to analyze whenever I have time, at a later point of time.
What is that?
Yeah, that was this.
Oh, okay.
And then a question like, even though we have a perspective about a certain process, a process happening even not for the sake of human need, the process has its own perspective
Uh-huh.
also. That it probably might have its own perspective, which is why it works in a certain way. So like path of its occurrence can also be called a perspective.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, you are right.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
That's why, especially human interpersonal conflicts go out of control. Despite the willingness of both the parties to stop it, once it is set in motion, it goes on its own way also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every word in that sense has its own perspective also. So we have to be careful in using the words. The perspective of a word, a term in the mind of one person would be different from the same word existing in the mind of another person. Very important.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, I have been really pained by one person's dialogue with me in the context of taking up that girl with the cancer. That person told me that I took it out of an immature excitement or something like that. The word she used was in Malayalam, which is avesam. I don't know what is the exact English of avesam. Avesam meaning a kind of blind jump,
Impulse, yeah.
an impulsive jump. So I did not respond to that, but I wondered why that person used that word. Whereas I took it out of hours and hours of reflection, maybe not no, weeks of reflection, weeks of hesitation, weeks of doubt and self-doubt and tension. Finally, with the only intent of trying to save somebody by my trust in the gurus and the trust in the sadhanas that I make, and by my sheer commitment to what I do. I don't know anything, of course. But on what basis that person said, I did not ask clarification, but it affected me a lot, actually. But I did not ask what that person meant by that word. Anyway, for example, this came to my mind just now. Yes, come on, yeah. All right.
And about perspective, I was also trying to understand perspective. And so perspective is a result of process, like I said earlier. It exists because there are processes happening, which is why we have perspectives.
Yeah,
And
very true, very true, very true. That's what is implied by the concept of capacity.
yeah,
The ability or the capacity of an individual's intellect to consider all the variables in its relative importance and its true linkages is correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then in terms of movement, there is a movement here as well, which is the movement of attention. Again, in the perspective of human beings, we have our attention is diverted to a certain process, and therefore we have a perspective about it.
Diverted.
Sorry?
You use the word diverted.
No, no. Therefore, we have a perception.
The perception and perspective are totally different thing.
Sorry, we have a perspective.
Yeah. Once again.
So, perspective about a process is a result of our attention going to a particular process.
Okay, alright. Okay, alright. Okay, yeah. Attention, yes.
Yeah.
The role of attention in process we will discuss in some other because because everything is a process. Attention to the very body process, attention to the very mental process one soul. That only finally elevates us to different levels, because when attention is the energy, attention is the fire. Okay? Once the variables in the mind get processed, unless it is processed, there will not be an outcome of an evolved self. All these ideas are to be processed. These are all right now just elements in stock. Like you purchased dal and sugar and all, kept it in beautifully arranged vessels or the glasses and things like that. If they are just like that kept in the kitchen, very beautifully arranged, etc., it won't generate any output. You have to take one of them, or two of them, or three of them, or whatever, and process it. Set it in a certain component of our mind, our analytical thinking, our reflection, our conceptualization. And it should be fired with the power of our attention. Then only it gets processed and an outcome will be happening. And those outcomes may not be that visible quickly, like the material outcome of a cup of tea. Because it is deeply a neuronal process, and it will take a lot of time to get it translated into our attitudes, into our perspectives, into our abilities, into our various manifestations of expressions and responses and behaviors and ways of doing and ways of relating and language. Okay. That's the problem with education. Just giving beautifully packed boxes of materials and reproducing the same materials in the answer sheet. The maturity you gain is sitting in the classroom, listening to the teacher, interacting with the students for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. In fact, in 2015 or 14, the so-called London Business School made a genuine survey with 950 whatever number of alumni about the relative importance of the true linkages of their development in London Business School. And they were given some items to rate it. It's called a rating scale. Rate the importance of that. I have reproduced that in my book, Organization Intellect Naveen. And to the surprise of the governing body or whatever body of London Business School is the number one, Vinay. The statistically number one rated by 900 plus alumni of London Business School is interaction with other people in the university, not the classrooms, not the lessons, not the principles of management they learned at all. Other than that, what subject knowledge? Maybe to an extent, maybe to a significant extent the medical students, and to an extent the engineering students, to an extent the law students. They may have to remember exactly the principles and the variables involved. And even for them, their personality, their character, their maturity, their principles of life must have been formed, which only become the intents that guide their profession, would be formed in their 4 years or 5 years of living in the campus, exposed to other variables in the environment and the background and so on and so forth. So we should have a perspective about everything. Identify your perspective about life, perspective about your behavior, perspective about your way of relating with people, perspective about the way you use language with other people. And also realize that every moment you are in a process, or every moment you are a process, your mental process is going on all the time. Your physiological processes, of course, that will go on even without your direct control. Like your respiration and heartbeat and alimentary processes will luckily go on by the organism. If they were also under the control of human beings, what would have happened? No idea. To the extent to which they control them, they are into troubles also. The only thing they can control, number one, is eating, which many people do not have any idea, any control. Alright, okay, go to the next one. That's all.
No, there is more. I'm sorry, something happened. One second.
No, okay, meanwhile, so look at the slide, Mantra Rishika. Meanwhile, a process is started, and if the intent and the will vanishes in between, what will happen to the process?
Sorry, can you repeat? You said processes started, then the intent and will?
Is suspended in between.
Oh.
Suspended, or it becomes a less acceleration, it becomes less powerful, it becomes less active. What will happen to the process? What will be the destiny of that process? Keep it in mind. Again, did anyone of you reflect upon the question which I asked the last time? If the totality of you, the WHOL, the whole of you, if it can be considered as a process, starting from being born into this world and to the point of disappearing from this world, could there be an intent behind that process? Okay, keep it there. Another way of asking that question is, can there be a process without an intent at all? Or can you find one single example of a process happening without an intent? Intent is somewhere. Forget about time, space, location of that intent. Without some intent, how can the setting of a given process be happening? Like as I said in the case of the anomalous development of toxic cells in the body, how that setting happened in the body of that person. Many things in existence, it is not easy to identify the intent. In fact, in the philosophy of I Ching, I-C-H-I-N-G, I Ching of China, it is mentioned that human beings cannot identify several significant intents that control their destinies. There are many uncertain intents, uncertainty about intents and things like that. There are unknowable intents, unknown intents, and etching is a method to get some clues about the nature and properties of those intents. Same is the case with Indian astrology also. To identify the possible probable intents due to which or by which or with which certain events and episodes are happening in the life of people. So if you change the intent, the process can be changed. That's what basically creativity therapy is. Or you can change the components by which a process can be changed. Or you change the elements, again process can be changed. Change the way of feedback monitoring of that person. Thereby the process can be changed. Manage the duration or train the person to have a perspective about the duration of that process, by which again change can be definitely ensured. So master process perspective. Create dialogues which can change the intents. That is the most powerful. Change the intent, which requires a process. So in this context, so Mandra got the remaining, yeah, do it.
Yeah. And so perspective is a mental impression of reference and referent realities. And usually a perspective is not physical, it's usually it's mental, it's not physically.
Not usually. Perspective, as you yourself said, it is a mental phenomenon.
Yeah.
A mental state. Yeah. That was in the very meaning of the word perspective also, which read out first by Sarah, if you remember. It's a mind setting, it's a frame of reference, it's a standpoint, it's an angle of observation and so on and so forth, of course. You also said it is a mental phenomenon. You only said the things themselves may not have a perspective or may have a perspective, which we are not really sure about. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we are able to identify that, then we are super masters. As I would say, the so-called Dhanvantris and Sushruta and Vagbhada and all that, they could identify the perspective of every leaf, every root, every plant, every seed and so on and so forth. By the setting of certain leaves and certain roots, they created the so-called herbal configuration or the so-called Ayurvedic medicines or rasayanas. They could easily identify the perspective of those materials, in fact. Otherwise, how can? Otherwise, how is it possible? And they also understood the perspective or the process realities of the human body also. That level also you can reach ideally. You don't need any specific time. Every day you can try for that. Every day, every night. But perhaps your workload and your tiredness and all that may not allow for that, but still develop the tendency of your intellect to see things in perspective, in the very office, in the very workplace, in every interaction with other people. Do that. First of all, it is very rewarding. It makes your mind alert and happy, I would say. Or that is the way the mind is in tune with the present. Because your attention is always with the ongoing process.
It's 23:30.
So our attention moves along with the process movements of the tea, then it is almost satori. That is the very purpose of Shanoyu or tea ceremony. The essence of tea ceremony is process perspective only. Your attention and your consciousness move in unison, like a sonometer, in complete unison with the transformation that happens in a tea. That's why tea ceremony is a part of satori or enlightenment. They don't do any meditation or do any prayer or anything. In order to reach satori meaning coming across the operating principle of the very central process of the human organism. That is called satori. So just focus your attention on the very transformation of a cup of tea. So that's why it takes almost 3 hours for a tea ceremony. Your attention and consciousness comes into tuning with the components and the settings and the elements and the transformation and the fire element and so on and so forth. They sit there in complete attention. Their mind becomes the tea. When their mind or consciousness becomes the very tea that processes, the outcome will be called satori. If it is so, your every activity in the office also can be like that. Why not? Then you will have answers to everything. Then you become a seer, S-W-R, seer, greater than a mystic. Seer meaning the one who sees through. Everything becomes transparent before the seer. A genius himself, the ultimate is that you become a seer. As soon as someone comes before you, you will just know. As soon as something happens, you will know. An ultimate example of that we discussed. Mantra, you have how many more slides?
I had 2 more slides, but now I'm not able to open it. Something happened.
Okay, then that means it is not required. That is the perspective of those slides.
Yeah.
You prepared 5 slides, okay, in one sitting or whatever, okay. 5 slides are slides of PowerPoint presentation. Why 2 are not coming? You only said everything has its own perspective. So that has really happened. I told you some time back about something called synchronicity. Forget about the word synchronicity. Synchronicity is again a name like creativity or genius. What happens in synchronicity is that
Sir, your voice is breaking. Can't hear you.
what happens in synchronicity is that you intend something and it happens. I told you the event, right? Joseph Jaworski. You intend something and it happens. Why not? Because if you are an integral part of the planet Earth, if the rains and the mist and Parvati, your microphone is on. Yeah. you are an integral part, every cell of your body is an integral part of the processes of the planet Earth. When every gun, every AK-47, when every cell phone also is an integral part of the planet Earth, you are definitely. And if an intent formed in that planetary configuration called the you, your body, why not it happen, actually manifest outside? Why not? If there is no rain, why don't you intend for a rain? Okay, most of the variables, elements involved in the process of rain are definitely not under your control. Their intents are located elsewhere, definitely yes. But for every process, the intent is originated from a single source. Then it may align, then it may invite other variables to cooperate with it. Get the point? The intent for a cup of tea does not take half an hour. Okay, for half an hour you may have the desire for a cup of tea. But the intent to go out and make a cup of tea is formed a split second. So an intent is a split second phenomenon. The original intent. Then that intent may invoke the collaboration or the support or the cooperation or the teamwork of other variables required in order to do a given process. But they are all primarily coordinated by that central intent. Why not your intent to have a rain be the central intent? In fact, to tell you, I have done it 2 times. In real hot summer season, at 2 o'clock noon, before an audience of some 10-20 managers in a company in Kerala state called what you call Kerala Feeds Limited, Kerala government undertaking which manufacture cattle feeds. I happened to talk about this in the concluding session. We were all standing outside in the garden of that company, standing in round, and I happened to talk about that during the program, and someone asked me, okay, you talked about intent, can you now intend for a rain? I said, why not, let me try. And within 5 minutes there was a drizzling. It was so gentle that in order to clarify there was a drizzling or not, we had to walk a little further on the road where the car of the managing director was parked. On the windshield there were drops of drizzling water. Ajit Basu also was present there at that time. You remember, Parvati also knows Ajit Basu, right? Yeah. He was also present. But we should not experiment with that all the time. There should be, an appropriate moment when that intent can be formed. It cannot be formed by our selfish or personal. If I talk very peripherally about that, there shall not be any so-called selfish motive. There shall not be any so-called aversions. There should be a very, 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 very extremely neutral moment with the vague presence of that intent. Something like that really I can say. Anyway, the background I told you. If every cell of our organism is functioning perfectly in unison with the nature process, manifested even in that sub-microscopic cell membrane, why not an intent formed by the consciousness generated by the cell assembly be invoking something outside? I tried it here also recently. I had to try. Because at one point of time, I realized that managing this um, so-called person here with a serious problem is reaching its ultimate point of difficulty. Then I really developed, I am sorry to tell you this, especially Vinay is there. I actually had to develop an intent that I must escape from this. And within 2 days, they themselves decided that they would like to go for an MRI scan to check the extent of growth happened to the cancer cells. At the time of going, their original plan was to go to a certain hospital, Amrita Hospital, to do the MRI scan and then perhaps to come back. So they did not want to go to another hospital where they had gone before. But when they went to this Amrita Hospital, where there is a very advanced facility perhaps for MRI scan, the entire responsible people had gone to their new hospital started in Hyderabad. So they said they could not do it there. Then they had to take her to another hospital where she had been taken before. And there they said the situation is too dangerous and she should undergo a surgery. And the surgery was done, it was very successful and things like that. So this I can tell only to this group of trusted people. But actually I had to develop it because things were reaching in such a climax here because of the pressure of the parents. The girl never wanted to go. When the parents asked her, why would you like to go? She said no. But anyway, I just gave a moment where I genuinely wanted to escape.
So the person has left.
Yeah, about a week back. In a much better condition of the total physiological process than the way she came here, of course. When an entire medical test was done, with some 30 or 35 items, every item was perfect. In the most ideal condition. That is the work we did, as a result of which I presume that the surgery also was quite smooth. Because the body condition was so perfect. I mean, that is not my work, that is the work of the Rasayanas, etc. etc. What I wanted to say is that there may be moments in your life also where not exactly this way, or rather, no. I wanted to say that if you want to have a rain, if you want to have some relative peace in your environment, why don't you try the intent? I always felt that there should be a critical mass of people who will assemble in some part of the world and sit there in a certain pattern. Pattern and design and setting is very important, okay? In a certain setting, some 33 people, for example, will sit and prepare the processes of their mind and create an intent that there should be some consequence in the world. Positive consequence. Anyway, we are not responsible for the world anyway, though. So anyway, try for that. And ultimately, let us stop today by saying that why not there be an intent for happiness? Okay, I don't mean that there should be perpetual happiness. Nobody in existence can be like that. Like And that is the process. There is light, then dark, then light, then dark. Seasons change. The seasons of our body change. There is hunger, you eat plenty of food. Again there is hunger, again you eat. So that cyclical nature of existence is a universal truth. But regardless of that, to sustain, so-called sustainability, which the world calls nowadays sustainability. So sustainability of relatively peaceful, relatively calm mental process, which is definitely possible. And what could be the intent of that process of the mind by which a relative calmness and peacefulness is sustained? How you can give an intent, you can utilize your intent to help, not physically, somebody else in distress. Can your language be originated out of your so-called neutrally pure intent so that somebody else is helped? In fact, I tried that also with the patient. I had told them in the very beginning that we are trying for a miracle. I told them at least definitely not less than 25 times. Not 25 times, almost once in 3 days. Because whenever the parents got panicky thinking that I don't have any, whatever, I told them that in the very beginning that we are trying for a miracle. We are trying to escape from the ocean of turbulence by catching hold of a hay, H-A-Y, piece of hay. That's what I tried, definitely. And I am sure it would have worked. It would require at least another 2 more years, which they were not ready. They were ready also, no doubt about that, but in between they developed a doubt, a reasonable doubt, a valid doubt which was found to be true, that the so-called cancerous cells were growing. And we don't have any measurement, we don't have an MRI scan to ascertain the rate of growth, which is a reasonable stand. Nothing, there was no conflict of interest or anything like that. They genuinely wanted to know the level of what you call cancerous cells, and which they found to be of a relatively larger size over a period of time, not because they are here. I would say the growth of cancerous cells would have been retarded when they were here. By the way, final topic is that always think about that intent to achieve happiness, intent to help, to enable somebody else to become wonderful, like your students or your colleagues or your disciples or your other people. And also give a secret intent so that one day you have to, that your entity has to become really undergoing satori. Give that intent. You generate that intent. That's why I repeatedly told you there cannot be a process without an intent. One. And if there is an intent, it will get executed. So, if an intent is formed, I ask another question. And if it is not executed, what will happen to the intent? Can you go back in time and delete that intent? Not possible. Irreversible. The universe is an ongoing process and it is irreversible. When I talked about this, a chemistry professor told me that in chemistry there are reversible processes. I said, okay, but that reverse process happened in another process, okay? Only the output looks the same. Am I right, Vinay? If potassium nitrate is changed into sodium sulfate, whatever, I don't know, okay, by another process it can be reversed to potassium nitrate. But that is the second process. That very process, like Mandra also mentioned, that very process duration cannot be the 1 second that passed is 1 second past. In which case, if an intent is formed and if it does not lead to a process, what will happen to the intent? Even if it is a momentary intent. In fact, I do not know whether there is a real relative difference between a momentary intent and a strong intent. To marry a beloved girl, we can say it is a strong intent. But at the origin point, it was an intent only. Gradually it became strong, okay? And the will got associated with that. Then he goes in search of that girl, he meets her, talks to her, tries to create a similar intent in that girl, and if she develops the will, then she also reciprocates. Then there is an intent to get married, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I don't know, maybe there is a stronger intent. I don't know how an intent to prepare a biryani is stronger than an intent to make a cup of tea. Intent is an intent is an intent and it's a split second. The formation of an intent takes only a split second. But maybe it can be added with other supplements by which it looks like a powerful intent. Yeah, which is quite possible, yes. But even if it is a millisecond intent, if it is formed and if it is not expanded or translated into doing of a series of steps towards the culmination of the end result of that intent, what will happen to the intent? That's the question. So, or an intent which is not translated into doing is not an intent. It's only an idea, it's only a desire, it is only something vague, it's only a sentence maybe formed in the mind. Okay? Like I would like to have a rain today, which anybody on the road also can have because it is summer. So we need some rain. Okay. It's only a sentence originated in the mind. It is not an intent, get the point. Oh, I love that girl, I like that girl, she is beautiful, okay. There is a secret desire, if I can love her, it is good, etc., etc. It's only a series of thoughts. So, series of thoughts should not be mistaken as intent. Intent always has a partial property of synchronicity also. Because of that intent it will happen. When I was about the age of 47 or something like that, one day I developed a stupid idea that I have some 20,000 files in my computer, I have some 2,000 pages of what you call handwritten material, somebody has to write it down. I appointed a girl, Preeta. You remember Preeta? Nitya? Okay, who was a first class first rank in English literature, she was not able to do it. And one day it occurred to me that I should get an associate. And Um, and anyway, quickly speaking, one day I had an idea that I should only an associate, meaning a female can be a proper associate, and proper associate to work on my ideas should be living with me. And if such a person comes, it should be at least half of my age only. So one day my so-called sister came and told me, not because of knowing my intention, she, in fact, her closest friend was a divorcee. Again, I like that girl. She was a university Kala Pratibha in Kathakali dance and so on and so forth. So she got divorced, and I also knew her, and she said, "Why don't I marry her?" Then I said, "She is almost your age, okay? Maybe I am 48, she may be around 42. So if I marry her, both of us will get equally aged. Then I don't need such a support. If I want to marry, I want to marry at least a girl of half of my age." I said it as a joke only. And immediately she made a very strong, teasing, humiliating, retaliating sentence. Really humiliating sentence. But I mentioned, okay. But at that moment, I genuinely thought so. This I remember. Because, and it happened exactly like that only. And I never did anything for that. In fact, one day into my office, her parents and her relatives and friends, so there in 2-3 vehicles, they came in front of my office and they pushed this girl into my room, saying that take her. This is what happened. Anyway, these are all examples, live case studies I am telling. It is not about me or anybody. Live case study. Why I say this is with the genuine intent that every one of you, I want you to do miracles. Though that girl left here for MRI scan, of course I did a miracle on her body. Because her entire digestive system was collapsed. Her entire liver was collapsed by terrible chemotherapy. And not only Indian chemotherapy, they imported about 8 serious doses of chemical from Germany. Her entire system was damaged. In about 2.5 months of time, everything was made perfectly alright by a so-called medical test done in a top diagnostic center in Coimbatore. That I did. Not I did, so-called, so that got done. Of course, I had the wonderful assistance of Vinay as a great blessing. That also is wonderful. Vinay was a true presence of God coming into the picture. Otherwise, I would have been in great trouble because there were many unanticipated problems. I never thought that all the systems will have gone by chemotherapy and all that. I had a blind trust in the gurus and in the nature process and in my commitment to do what I promised to do. And there were other little miracles happened in case of Vinay also. We don't want, in this context, which I don't want to talk about. That all happened because of what I call, if I use the word, the clarity and integrity of our intent. That's why all these things happen properly. Otherwise, if some other thing happened, I will be arrested by the police. No doubt about that. Because I don't have any background in medicine, I don't have any eligibility at all. Other than my trust in what I decide to do. I don't consider it as an escape or anything. I am talking everything in the context of making you impressed about the power and the potentiality of the intent and the mind setting required in order to have that intent, that perfect clarity and integrity. I don't want to use the word purity and all that. They are all very corrupt words. Perfect integrity and truthfulness to oneself and genuineness. Be genuine. These are the English words we can use. But see the referent and the referred mind setting. Alright. So, once again,
It's 0 hours.
reflect on process perspective and intent. That is what the entire existence is. That's what the entire universe is. There must be a point of intent for the very universe, which the mystics and great mystics conceptualize as Almighty or God or whatever it is. But their only mistake is giving a homotropic form. See, that is a human being, especially a male human being as the God, etc., etc. That is absolute bullshit. But an invariant element operating everywhere. Like Uday pointed out, that intent is 100% operating every moment. It is not that intent operated in the beginning and it went somewhere else and there is an output and you just take the tea. No. That's why it is told, God is in the details. That's why God is omnipresent. In every thornilum, thurumbilum, everywhere it is there. Come into tuning with that, then you will see a lot of difference. That is the fundamental requirement. Otherwise we are insulting that entity within us. Our every cell membrane is a true representation of the very God, our very invariant aspect. Forget about the word God. The very intent of the universe is present in every cell membrane, every nucleus. And our attention should be able to appreciate that and feel grateful to that, rather than disregarding it and going into some null state and flying elsewhere. Don't do that. That is the truth. You are talking about perspective, the truth. That is the truth. And that is the most critical. Forget about importance. And don't worry to depend on that. Don't doubt yourself to do that, because I think that also is a fundamental requirement. Okay, good night to you all.
What you say?
Good night.
Night. Thank you, sir. Good night.
Bye bye. Bye bye Parvati.
Good night.
Bye bye Naveen. Bye bye Nitya. Bye bye Sara. Bye bye Vinay. Bye bye Christabel.
Good night.
Bye bye Arjun. Bye bye Mantra Rishika.